The verse of the day is Proverbs 2:3-5, and it says, "Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. Search for them as you would for silver. Seek them like hidden treasures. Then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord, and you will gain knowledge of God." So yesterday we talked about what wisdom is. We talked about how to get it in terms of the heart posture that we need, fearing God, humility, obedience. Then we get wisdom. Today takes the how a bit further in a literal sense. So what are the things we need to do to gain that heart posture of fear of God? It kind of reminds me of the difference of believing and following. When you believe in Jesus, that's a heart posture decision. And it's from that belief that you then do something about your belief, that you then choose to follow and accept the way God calls us to live. So then it turns into action. So now that we know that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, what do we do to gain that fear of the Lord? We talked yesterday about how it's developing relationship, it's putting him first. But how do we do that? How do we go about that? I kind of love the whole first section of chapter 2. So verse 1 and 2, I believe, probably should have been included. Verse 1 says, "My child, listen to what I say and treasure my commands." So step 1 is listen, then treasure his commands. Verse 2 says, "Tune your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding." When it comes to treasuring someone's commands, when it comes to valuing someone's wisdom or opinion, you can't get to a place of value if you're not listening to the potential value that that person has to offer. Growing in relationship with God is a journey of learning how to listen, learning how to pay attention to God. And the process of learning how to pay attention to God, learning how to pay attention to God's presence, is spending time with him in the present moment. So daily time with him is going to teach you how to listen more for him. It's going to teach you how to listen to what he says, to listen to what his commands are. It's going to teach you how to pay attention more to his voice and to have him take up more real estate in your mind. So, okay, first step was having the heart posture of, Lord, I want to fear you. God, I want to fear you so that I can gain your wisdom. Lord, help me to put you first in every category of my life. Okay, if that's my desire, now I'm going to try to do something about it. I'm going to try to spend daily time with him. And in that daily time, I'm going to try to listen to what he says. I'm going to try to read about what he says. And then from what I get with what he says, I'm going to try to hold his commands with value. Try to walk out the way he calls me to live. And then we get to today's verse. Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. So the more you spend time in God's presence, listening to what he says, you're probably going to have things come up that don't make sense. This is why in the Jesus Challenge, there's an understand portion where we seek understanding. And then verse 4 says, "Search for them as you would for silver. Seek them like hidden treasures." Search for them. What's them? Them is insight. Search for insight and understanding like you would for silver or a hidden treasure. So when you spend time with God and you have questions and things aren't making sense, seek understanding, cry out for insight. And this is why the journaling portion is so perfect for this, because that's a time where you can journal, Lord, I don't understand this. Lord, I'm feeling this way. Why? God, this is coming up in my life. What do I do about it? And you get to express everything that's coming up on paper to God. And that's you crying out for insight. If I'm going to be really plain, the reason why I discovered Jesus was real, like someone I could really talk to in the moment and process with, was because I cried out for insight in my journal back in 2013. I was journaling, Lord, I don't like the way I feel around these people. I feel insecure when I do this. I feel like I don't know how to speak up. I was just very honest about all the things that I didn't like. I was crying out for insight about why I was the way I was, and asking for insight about what his word meant and how to apply it to my life. I remember saying, God, I don't know what people mean when they say your word comes alive. I don't understand. I've never experienced that. And I would cry out for insight. Lord, help me to know what it means when people say your word comes alive. I want to be able to apply it to my life and follow your lead well. So those are perfect examples of how we cry out for insight and ask for understanding. It reminds me of that verse, seek and you will find. Ask and you will receive. Knock and the door will be opened. This is what happens when you pursue Jesus. When you seek Jesus, you find him because he shows up. All he needs is for you to open the door because you and I have free will. So he doesn't just take over if we don't invite him in because we have free will. So the moment we do invite him in, the moment we do give him an opportunity is the moment he shows up. Some of my favorite verses are my favorite verses because it's kind of like a math problem to me. It's like, oh, this plus this equals this. And that's not always the case when it comes to God because there's going to be things we don't understand. But when it comes to yesterday's verse and today's verse, it very much falls in line. So yesterday, what's the beginning of wisdom? Fear of the Lord. Okay, how do I get fear of the Lord? Okay, listen to what God says. Spend time with him in his word. Then value his commands. Try to walk out the way he calls you to live. When things don't make sense, when triggers come up, when life happens, cry out for insight. Ask for understanding. God, why do you say this? I'm having trouble with it. Lord, why am I feeling this way? It's feeling like I'm doing this God thing wrong. And then the more you search and seek and cry out for insight, verse 5 says, then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord. Because the more you rely on God in all of those moments, the more you're going to see his power show up. So the more you're going to understand, okay, yeah, God has to be first in my life because now I'm seeing him move. Now I'm realizing that he's real. You're going to give God real estate in your life and in your everyday moments and in your brain, which means you're going to discover more of him. And that's how your faith is going to grow, because the more you seek insight, the more you're going to gain it. And the more you gain it, the more you're going to understand what it means to fear the Lord, because you're going to see, oh, when I pursue what God says, when I'm obedient, I tap into pure love. I get freedom. Things that I thought were my personality are actually falling off of me because it was just pain and I just needed healing. I just needed God's love to fill my heart. And now I'm seeing myself change from the inside out, which is going to help you understand what it means to fear the Lord. So it's all connected. The funny thing about it is the more you seek God as your first response, the more you see why he needs to be your first response. Because you're going to see him show up and then you're going to be like, whoa, it's not in my strength that I get healed. It's not in my strength that I overcome these habits that I thought were just who I was, that I thought were my identity. But that's how the devil talks. The devil correlates your habits with your identity. God says your sin and those bad habits aren't who you are. It's just a struggle that I can help you overcome. So when we go to him as our first response, we're going to see him show up, which is going to grow our faith, grow our fear of God, and help us seek and receive more understanding about the way he calls us to live. Okay?